Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Evil Men. So, what do you think?
I think it's time for us to introduce ourselves as the classic cast of Evil Men. It's me, Michael Belazzo. To my right is James Hartnett, and to his right is the third regular co-host, Chris Locke. Hold on, wait a second.
Hi, boys.
Oh my God, it's literally my wife, Evany Rosen.
I've been Chris Locke all along, James.
Oh,
Gotcha.
no. Oh God, the things we've done.
This is wild. A podcast with someone's wife. I feel like we're at Hedonism 2, Jamaica's top swingers resort.
Oh.
That was the theme of our wedding.
Hedonism 2.
Yes. God.
First marriage, second hedonism. That was the theme.
No, but welcome, Evany, to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's going to be a good one.
Thanks for filling in last minute.
Yes.
Chris had to cancel.
And I live here.
We hope his daughter is feeling better. And you live here, and you're a huge aficionado of our wrestler topic later.
Yeah.
So that was a no-brainer.
If you thought I was an expert guest on Napoleon, Henry VIII, some of these historical topics, wait till I tuck into wrestling.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't know anything about it, but Evany, that's part of the joy and
That's
beauty
part
of
of
the
the joy.
episode.
Two fat guys enter a ring. They have a little tussle. Bells ring, and the crowd goes nuts.
Bells ring.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, like, you know, in Catholic church, those
Oh, no,
bells.
no, no, no,
Oh, yeah,
no,
I'm
no.
imagining all those kind of women lined up going like, dung, dung, and they all pick up the different bells and they're all playing them.
And a man sings in Latin in the corner as well.
While Hulk Hogan ejaculates all over a ring.
Evany, just since it came up, I'm just going to go there. Did you ever see the Hulk Hogan sex tape?
I've never seen the Hulk Hogan sex tape. I've barely thought about it, and I know it exists, and anytime I go, I should Google that, I go, no, I shouldn't, and I don't.
Go ahead, Mike.
It's a dream in black and white.
Okay.
It
Like
really.
in a security footage kind of way?
It does look like that,
I
right?
believe this story goes that Hulk Hogan was
Was
friends with a shock jock from Tampa called Bubba the Love Sponge. Was his
I
name.
have heard of Bubba the
And
Love Sponge.
Bubba the Love Sponge idolized Hulk Hogan and loved Hulk Hogan, and he was like, couldn't believe, even though he was a millionaire shock jock, that he was friends with Hulk Hogan. And Bubba the Love Sponge had a much younger, I guess you'd say sexier wife. And he asked, I guess, Hulk Hogan to make love to his wife. And Hulk Hogan was like, okay. But I don't think Hulk Hogan knew that Bubba the Love Sponge had put a little camera in the bedroom where Hulk Hogan was getting it on with his wife. And then that got leaked. So it was a weird, sordid
so
story.
Bubba the Love Sponge asked Hulk Hogan to fuck his wife and then secretly filmed it?
Yeah.
Sorry
And-
for not using
yeah.
your preferred term of make love in this context, where it's never been more relevant than this context.
Agree?
But
Oh, yeah.
that's because in my mind it was like, oh yeah, he idolized him, and then Hulk Hogan.
No.
sneaky fucked his wife. But no,
He
he
was
was
like,
please,
I want my
take my wife, please.
sort of like, you know, this person I look up to in some kind of childhood way to do it with my wife, and I want to be able to watch it later. Probably, I'm going to guess, Michael, to jerk off. I mean, you can only assume.
I mean, who knows what Bubba the Love Sponge wanted to use it for? But it is a nice way to show your friend how much you think of them. And it's like the reverse of what kings would do. What's the prima?
Prima
Yeah, it's the
nocta.
reverse
It's the reverse. That's what
Quite
Bubba.
subversion of prima nocta.
Prima
yeah.
nocta for
Bubba
2024.
the Love Sponge was doing the opposite, and he knew it.
And actually, Mike, in the sex tape, Bubba the Love Sponge says to Hulk Hogan, now listen, Hulkster, I know, you ever heard of prima nocta? They used to do that.
Oh yeah,
back?
brother. Kings and
Bubba the
emperors.
Love Sponge cameos in the Hulk Hogan sex
Well-
tape that he made him make. I just assumed he was DPing.
No, well, the thing I just said was a joke. But
Oh.
yes, in the
I
actual...
was ready to believe it.
No, in the actual video, it starts with Bubba the Love Sponge walks into the bedroom and goes, all right, you guys do your thing. I'm just going to be down the hall in my office.
Mm-hmm. Doing
This
some
was approved.
doing his taxes.
Yeah, like I've got an Excel sheet to fill out.
I'm writing an Oxford paper about prima nocta. Anyway, this is research. I'll be down the hall.
And
Prima Nocta Mania is gonna go wild on you. What are you gonna do? But if you watch it, and people who have seen the tape will know, but Hulk Hogan, it seems, was taken by surprise after eating dinner. Like, I guess he was offered his friend's wife after dinner, because when the sex tape begins, he's like, "Oh, I feel like a big fat pig. I ate so much pasta." And then they do it.
he does.
Yeah.
Why would Bubba the Love Sponge serve pasta if he knew he was going to do
Yeah,
this?
it should
That's a
be-
night. That's a night for a light mixed grill and a salad.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's right. Yeah, and I actually watched. I mean, I love how we didn't plan this, and right off the top,
Yeah.
boom, we got 5 great minutes on
Prima Nocta.
Prima Nocta.
Well,
And
I'm
Hulk
not going to
Hogan?
bring any information about wrestling, but I will try to suck any history out of this.
Well, I watched an interview with Howard Stern and Bubba the Love Sponge post Hulk Hogan sex scandal.
It's like our generation's Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley. Amazing.
And Howard
yeah, they're that different.
Howard Stern, you can imagine, you know, he's getting into the thick of it. He's like, why did you let, I guess, Hulk Hogan have sex with your wife? And Bubba the Love Sponge was like, oh, man, you know what? He was just bugging me to do it, and he just kept bugging me, and eventually I said, fine, go for it. Which I don't think is true.
Path of least resistance. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I don't think that happens too much, that your friend says to you, like, please, come on, man, let me sleep with your wife. And eventually you go, fine.
You've worn me down.
I'm sick of this conversation. Fine. But so like he was clearly trying to hide that he got off on it. He was like, oh, I just did it because I was sick of it.
But and it's weird because it's like, but then that's why I'm like, don't make the cameo, because he could have maintained a line of like, I didn't know what was happening. Like Hulk Hogan slept with my wife, because I believe that would happen. I don't think the conversation of I don't want to cross your boundaries, so I'm just gonna beg and beg and beg you to let me do it. It has ever happened.
And it was almost like at the beginning of a Fringe festival show when a guy comes out before the play, like, hey, here's I'll be down the hall. Yeah.
Turn off your cell phone.
Yeah.
No photos.
Hulkster, if you don't mind turning off your cell phone, that would be great when you're having sex
We're
with
gonna
my
be
wife.
passing around a bucket at the end. This is pay what you can. So
Please make sure you don't get any pasta sauce on the bed sheets.
You can jizz here, and here, but no, we're out.
the beer tent's gonna be at Honest Ads after this is done. Just show your Fringe pass and you can get in.
Yeah. So that is probably that's the most sordid wrestling adjacent story I know.
And did Hulk Hogan sue Bubba the Love Shrimp or
Well,
Gump?
no.
Bubba Gump.
Bubba the Love Gump?
So Deadspin, when it was really in its heyday, I believe, leaked the video.
But to
Or
be
showed
honest,
the video.
Let's be honest. The person who leaked the video was probably Bubba the Love Sponge.
Right. They didn't leak it, I guess, but they hosted
Let's
it.
be honest.
Mike's like, cut the
for
bullshit.
once on this podcast, let's be honest.
And I remember the editor at the time was this guy, AJ Dallario, and they hosted the sex tape. And that's where I watched it. And
That's where I watched it. I didn't watch it. That's where I watched it. They made me.
yeah, exactly. And Hulk Hogan is super pissed, and Peter Thiel, who we totally should do as an episode.
Very
I
litigious.
feel like every
Yeah.
man you've mentioned for the last 5 minutes could be an episode of this
Yeah.
show. There's been
Yeah.
no exempt men.
We haven't done Hulk Hogan, have we? No,
we have.
did.
But Peter Thiel is very litigious. So we.
Who is Peter Thiel?
He's like a Silicon Valley billionaire guy, and also quite a big Republican donor.
And he co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk.
So two cool guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Deadspin was this like a sister site of Gawker.
Yep. I
Right.
And
remember
Gawker had published allegations that Peter Thiel was gay and closeted, I think. And so he had a vendetta against Gawker Media. And when they published this Hulk Hogan video, he funded the lawsuit, and it brought down Gawker. That guy, AJ Dallario, was like a real internet hotshot, and he's like
the
bankrupt
one
now.
that made you watch the video. Yeah.
He is the guy that forced me to watch it. And then the websites are dead now, like fully nothing. I mean, maybe they still exist, maybe, but I think they're just dead.
I think they're dead. But at least when all the smoke cleared, we still had the amazing blurry black and white video of past his prime Hulk Hogan having sex, and you can't really see much that's happening in it.
No, and he talks about being bloated.
He talks about being bloated.
Yeah.
Have you ever,
I hope
Michael?
that woman's okay.
Yeah. Have you ever, Michael, after a love-making session, ever talked about how you're bloated and feel full and
Never after, only during. only while it's happening.
That's when we like to hear about it.
Yeah.
yes.
I'm curious. If you had to think of all your childhood idols, athletes, actors, whoever that you love the most, and one of them you had to encourage to sleep with your significant other. So
God.
could be me.
Yeah.
Huh.
Who
would it be?
Yeah.
Oh,
And the weird thing
man.
is,
Who
Bubba
am
the
I
Love
getting down
Sponge-
with?
yeah.
Bloated from pasta.
And I was thinking, who was my hero when I was a child? But the weird thing is that I think Bubba the Love Sponge and Hulk Hogan are basically the same age. So he adored a fellow adult man. But let's
Well,
take
is that going to kind of be a theme in wrestling and its fans?
think
It'd be like if I asked Tim Heidecker.
yeah, I
It's
really
like,
want.
I look up to him, I guess, but you're probably 1 year older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who would it be? Who would it be for all of us?
Oh God, see, it's actually a tough question because do you go the route of, oh, this guy's not attractive, so maybe there's nothing, or I just like him, and so I wouldn't be as bothered. I mean, wow, that is so tough. How about Joe Carter?
Okay.
He's older,
Mhm.
so I feel a little less insecure about it, and he was a childhood hero. 1993 home run,
Mhm.
Jolton Joe.
Treat me with respect.
Touch 'em all,
Yeah,
Joe.
Touch 'em
Oh,
all, Joe.
wow.
Well,
Quite literally.
How
Never had a home run like that again.
Touch 'em all, Joe, and touch my wife too.
You're in the corner yelling, "Touch my." So, you guys know the movie Beetlejuice? You've heard of Beetlejuice?
I believe
right?
I have.
You've heard of Ferris Bueller's Day Off? An actor who really
I know what
I
you're gonna
adored
say.
when I was a kid.
Yeah.
No, other than Jeffrey Jones. I would select Jeffrey Jones to make love to my significant other.
No, Mike.
If you're listening soon.
I think we both know why.
Yeah, you do
remember
know
Jeffrey
that
Jones.
Jeffrey
Deadwood
Jones,
as well. He was in
No,
Deadwood.
that's not what we're gonna say.
You do know he did get in trouble for, I guess, child.
I mean, these are unproved allegations.
Okay,
and
well that's a fun. Yeah,
as far as I know.
It was
it's an original choice, Mike. I
hundreds
like
of hours
it.
of
Jeffrey
child
Jones
pornography
innocent?
on his private.
Yeah. Hashtag Jeffrey Jones is innocent.
Hashtag Jeffrey Jones fuck my wife. You're innocent.
He's the king of pop and he's the king of the cinema.
I'll never get over that he was in Deadwood after that came out.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, man, he's good. You know that guy's a good character actor when you still get a job after that
His
comes out.
talent transcended his predilection for underage children.
Yes.
Or for, children, all
Yeah,
are
Mike,
underage.
yeah.
No, they're
Yeah.
adult children.
Yeah,
They're
adult
of
children.
age children.
Well,
A
kid at
child
heart.
is just an adult.
They're just kids at heart.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
just
yes.
they're
Yes.
just,
Yeah.
Of age porn stars who have a joie de vivre.
Oh my God.
How about Evany?
Yeah.
Oh,
You've been
wow.
pretty
You've
quiet.
been pretty damn quiet on this one.
What do you got to hide?
Joe, come on out.
Yeah.
It's my hero too. That's a really good question. You might get to have sex with Kirsten Dunst.
Whoa.
Kirsten Dunst. Oh, sure. That's probably better than Joe Carter.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks.
You're welcome.
Joe Carter wasn't in the damn Virgin Suicides.
Actually, he did have a small
Oh, you know what?
role, Yeah.
Actually, for a bit of a wild time, might be Courtney Love.
Whoa. Okay. Present day or early 90s?
Well, I mean, you were not telling me that I was going to have sex with Joe Carter in his prime. You're like, what
He's
I like
kinda
about
older.
it is how old he is. So present day Courtney.
Honey, I brought home an elderly man for you. It's a treat for both of us.
I could have had Tim Heidecker in this scenario. But you said I'd feel more comfortable with present day Joe Carter. So you're getting present day Courtney. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. That'd be cool.
Legend.
So, Evany.
Legend. Yes? Oh, did you want to change the subject?
Well,
Okay, I suppose.
yeah. You just went on a trip with your dad. Your dad wanted to go on sort of a big trip with you.
It's his 80th birthday.
His 80th birthday. He thought, let's go on a wild, crazy trip.
Yeah.
And so he took you on a safari.
Yeah, we went. So we've just because it needed to make sense. We flew to Amsterdam, and then we flew to South.
Famous for its African
for
wildlife.
for its African beasts, Afrikaans beasts. But we flew to Amsterdam and spent there a couple days there, and then we had a layover in Frankfurt, even though there's so many direct flights from Amsterdam to Johannesburg. And then we went to Johannesburg, and then we flew to Hotspot, and then we went on a safari, and then we flew to Zurich, and then we flew to Rome, and then we flew home. It was a poorly thought out, very long trip. But the highlight is, yes, I went on safari with my old dad.
Nice. And they took you and your dad out in a Jeep every day, and you went and looked and you saw...
Yeah, so we saw a lot. So, okay, I would say if I was rating the safari, in terms of seeing wildlife in the wild, 10 out of 10. I saw lions eating a giraffe. I saw a giraffe that was alive and well. I saw elephants. I saw African buffalo.
Your pictures you sent me were incredible.
It's nuts what I saw.
It's like a close-up photo of an elephant. And Evany just took it from a Jeep.
Just
like, it's
staring
crazy.
at it.
Damn.
So that part was great.
And this was in a public park. It wasn't some dark situation. They're like these were animals roaming free in a park.
Yeah. We weren't hunting them for sport or anything. We were on their turf.
Yes.
But this was in Boluli, which is like a game reserve that's sort of connected to Kruger National Park. So if I had to rate the animal element of no.
He's jealous you're talking about other animals.
He wants to prove that he's got something to bring to the table. So yeah, if I had to rate the seeing animals on safari element, 10 out of 10. If I had to rate the kind of overall vibe and experience and accommodation situation, I would give it an extremely haunted rating. It was because we got there after this long travel day, and then the guide, who was very cool, picked us up. But he was like, "Yeah, you're the only people staying at this lodge," and we were like, "Doesn't it?"
Reminds me of the a more tropical Bates Motel.
It actually genuinely imagine a Bates Motel energy, but there's just going to be an Afrikaans villain that's going to enter partway through. So we're like, oh, okay. So and it's like this big lodge, beautiful lodge building, and it's overlooking a dry riverbed, and there's 9 cabins, so it can house like 18 to 20 guests.
Yeah.
And it's me in the farthest away cabin, my dad in the closest cabin, and nobody else there, and then a full staff. So this was very strange, and there was no reception anywhere but in the lodge. So anytime I wanted to talk to James on the phone, I was doing. But there was this weird guy named Nick who clearly shouldn't have been working at a safari lodge because he kept talking about how he was just into music and had worked in the music industry. And he kept insisting he had to walk me back to my cabin because of hyenas, and I don't believe it. I didn't see one hyena, but so I was monitored all the time.
I think that's in the game.
It was very
the pickup
game.
artist book. There might be hyenas around.
I should walk you home. There might be a hyena around.
It was simultaneously both the game Pickup Artist Book and the game Michael Douglas Phone, where you don't know if this is reality. And that was increased. So we get there, it's fine. Everyone's nice. We're like, okay, we're the only ones. Sure. And the woman who owns it is kind. Still, you're getting a bit of white South Africa energy in a way. You're like, it's hard here. But okay. We can edit that part out. But so we get there. The woman who owns it is fine, but her husband wasn't there yet, Nigel. And I've got to kind of prep my South African accent to describe this man. So Nigel emerges out of the mist on the second day. He's wearing full khakis. He's carrying a recreational bamboo cane. He's clearly a hard drinker. He's got a big bulbous nose and beady eyes. And truly, if Quentin Tarantino made a movie about the Boer War, and there was a villain called the Afrikaans, and that he had no other name, and Christoph Waltz would play him, it would be this man. It looked like he should have been holding a blunderbuss and was ready to hunt humans for sport. He was wild. And he just kept saying increasingly strange things to us. So the first thing he said, the first night, and my dad and I, both history lovers, really avoiding the subject of history on this particular trip. We're not kind of tucking into South African history while we're there. We are smart. So literally while we were explaining how this LCBO works, he was like, wait, let me get my accent ready. Yeah, no, that's not the same as here, but it is kind of the same. The colonial histories of our countries. And I went, Are you sure? Ours not great, but yours is famously insane. Like, I don't think what's this hill you're dying on? So we were like, okay, yeah, bye. And then the next night, my dad and I are having dinner, and it just feels like you could hear like kind of like bongo drums in the background as he like emerged out of the mist, like the bad guy from Jumanji. And he's just suddenly next to our table, and he goes, Canada, eh? And we're like, uh-huh. He's like, so what are you going to do about Quebec? And we were like, what are you? Nothing. I don't know. And he was like, well, they might not be part of Canada for much longer. And we were like, are you talking about the 1994 referendum? Like, when was the last time you got the internet here?
Mulroney needs to sort that out.
And saying it like it was this dark problem. And we were like, no, we're good. And then it somehow brought, like, I was like, oh, because he was talking about how he's Scottish and they should secede, and I was like, oh yeah, well, my husband's Irish, and I guess, they, whatever, and then he's like, yeah, the Irish, they're weird, and I was like, okay. So he walks away, and my dad, like, and even my old white dad turns to me, and he's like, Jesus, I feel like he's gonna go on a diatribe about the bloody Jews next. Well, cut to the next day. The next day, we come back from a game drive. We've been up since 5 a.m. My dad goes back to his cabin. I just want to send a fucking text because there's no reception anywhere than then when the weird music bat who's hitting on me because of hyenas was not around. So I'm just trying to send a text. And again, like the shit, like the boom, 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 and the shadow comes up and he's there. And unprompted, he goes, so you're obviously Jewish. I say, when you're a Jew alone in the wild, literally, that's when that's high on a list of sentences you don't want to hear.
Never a good way to start a sentence.
No.
Yeah.
Don't approach Jews that way. I'm gonna say it if I could give any advice. So I had to be like, And then he starts talking to me in a way that I think he thinks I'm gonna like, but about how, and he's got really specific facts. He's like, at one point in the 80s, there were 655,000 Jews in South Africa. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, unfortunately, they're all leaving though. There's all these communities of just old Jews, old Jews. And I'm like, okay. And then he starts talking about, in a way that was insane about why that's so sad is because it's really bad for the South African economy because the Jews owned all the diamond mines. So, you guys own it. And then he goes, yeah, so, you owned all the diamond mines, so that's not heaven. And then, of course, the medical profession.
Also, lawyers and accountants.
Literally, it was like, all the jobs from the Woody Allen jokes, who I've heard is still doing great and no issues there. Just Quebec. And I had to just, like, finally be like, I have to go. Like, I can't. But it was, that was wild.
We were talking before, and I was like, yeah, when you mentioned that if you think of out of the blue, if you said to someone, like, what are the two, like, racist accents that everyone associates with racism, it'd be like Hitler speaking, like, Austrian, German, and a white South African guy. Those are so you don't want to go down that road with a white South African, yeah.
And the worst part was, so we were not the worst part, it was all weird, but also fine. I really think, like, my dad kept being like, I think he thinks he's connecting with us. Like, we're his hotel guests.
Do you want to help me rebuild Rhodesia? You and your father?
Wow, if only we could go back to the golden age. Yeah, it was, but then the disturbed part was, because it was like, there was the whole thing, it's like, it's just you guys, but on the last night, a group of 8 people from Mexico were going to come. And I was like, oh, great, I can't wait. My dad and I both travel there a lot, we speak Spanish, we're excited to meet them. And then slowly, as I'm meeting this guy, I was like, how do I warn them? Because he keeps talking to me, kind of making comments about how he doesn't understand how they can all afford to come because they're Mexican, in a way that I was like, what if you came up to me and said, you're obviously Jewish, what are you gonna say to this Mexican group? And they were so nice, and like they like ran an app, and they were there working, and this was their vacation, and I just like didn't know how to be like, I'm sorry. Just like as they were like, they had like a bunch more days to their safari, and I was like, good luck. Sorry. Lo siento. And then just left, but I hope they're.
So what are you gonna do about Montezuma?
We're back, and just before, this is the part, Evany, usually when I mention that we have a Patreon account, but I just want to pause it for a second because when we took a little break, Mike asked you a really good question, and I wanted to make sure it was captured on the podcast.
I have a question. Actually, it's more of a comment. No, I have a question.
I love this kind of guy.
When you were on your African safari,
Yes.
here's my question. Did you see an elephant go to the bathroom up close?
Yes, more than once.
And did it look like a waterfall of feces?
No, I would say they're mostly eating bark, so their stool is quite tight, but
Damn.
big. It's like big plops of elephant dung, and it's everywhere.
Was it the size of like a rugby ball or something?
It was the size of your head.
Wow, that was like one little
That
thing.
was one plop. And the guide explained to us that like rhinos are like kind of more like they'll kind of like make a hole and all take turns pooing in it and then leave it away.
Yeah,
But,
gross.
Elephants just like don't give a shit and will just shit while walking. Like it's like they don't stop. They
My
just keep
kinda
going
animal.
and just but then apparently there are a lot of uses for elephant tongue.
Really?
You can use it to you can burn it and the smoke will cure a headache. You can
Mike, I got to get that for you next time you have a
I
migraine.
smell terrible, but my head feels great.
there's something you can do with it to cure menstrual cramps, but I kind of glossed over that part. You can throw it at your enemies. You can.
Can you build a structure with
I
it?
think so. And I smelled it, and it doesn't smell bad. It just smells like mud. And
Did you pick it up?
the guy did, and then I put some in my head, and then he.
Oh, I hope you've washed it since then.
I haven't, babe.
Damn.
Wow.
And I'm always putting my fingers in your mouth.
Well, Evany, on our
No reaction to
Patreon
that.
only. Here's my pitch, because after we record this episode, we're going to do an episode for our Patreon subscribers. And how about you give us all the amazing animal facts and stories from your trip on the Patreon only bonus episode?
I have so many.
And maybe I'll tell my equally fascinating and exotic tale of spending 10 days in Birmingham, England.
Yes.
As well.
I want to hear about this.
Yeah.
I think we should go fact for fact. Where I'll say a fact I learned about animals, and then you say a fact about Birmingham.
I have some incredible and disturbing poop facts about Birmingham, England as well.
Do people from Birmingham stop to take a shit, or they just
Nope.
do it while walking?
They mug you, they steal your wallet, then they shit as they run away.
Well,
Yeah.
if you want to hear this exciting bonus episode, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/evilmen and you sign up and give a small amount every month, and you get 2 bonus episodes a month, including one upcoming with Evany Rosen and all the old ones we have. And you get access to our Discord where you can chat with us. And also, there's a code for Patreon subscribers to get 15% off our live show that's
Yes.
coming up.
Saturday, June 22nd at the Paradise Theatre in Toronto. Evil Men Live is returning for another episode.
Yes.
Of it.
The other live shows we've done have been freaking amazing. People love them.
Mm-hmm.
You can, on our YouTube, you can even watch the last one. It was crazy. So it's going to be great. Please come out. It's a Saturday night, June in Toronto.
Nothing nicer than summer in Toronto inside of a beautiful theater with Evil Men, the podcast. And
It's true.
the code is run and shit. No, just joking. If you want the code, you have to sign up for Patreon. Ding, ding, ding. In this corner, we have a podcaster weighing in at
160.
160 pounds. And his opponent in the other corner is the listening audience of Evil Man Podcast.
Which would be many tens of thousands of pounds.
And they have a combined weight of, not to make you feel bad about yourselves, but tens of millions of pounds. And they all want to know the answer to one question. James, who is the subject of this week's Evil Men?
Mike, you've never done a character more... You've never been more committed to a character than this, Michael Buffer type.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
gonna say, what
selling it.
an honest take on Michael Buffer. Even from the beginning when you were committing, kind of instead of a big, let's get ready to rumble, it was kind of this tight mouth.
Yes.
Sort of Michael Buffer doing a bad impression of John F. Kennedy that quietly fell
Michael
apart.
Buffer in a library.
Yeah.
Casting directors, I am available to do voices in your animated projects or voice over commercials.
You want to know something crazy just before we get going?
Yeah.
So Michael Buffer, the guy we were just talking
Yeah.
about, who's famously like, let's get ready to rumble. And he became a celebrity in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's boxing, not wrestling, right?
Boxing.
Michael Buffer? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a dude who does the same thing for UFC, and he goes, "It's time," and he's famous now. And they like found out they're related, and they didn't even know. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'll have to look this up to be. Well, I won't do it right now, but I'm pretty sure I read that those two guys like found out
Like
they're
twins
related.
separated at birth.
Yeah,
Were
and they're both the two famous catchphrase fight guys.
Was their grandfather a man who yelled out pretty boring things in a loud voice?
Anyway, Mike, this week I chose a topic suggested on the Discord by Jalon Karich. Probably not his or her real name, but
Jalon Karich.
that's their handle on the Discord. And they suggested the Ultimate Warrior. Evany, you knew not a single thing about the Ultimate Warrior. I had to show you a video on YouTube of even what he looked like.
Yeah, just a man with kind of some decorative anklets shaking ropes a lot.
That's a bang-on description, honestly. Mike, what's your relationship and history with the Ultimate Warrior?
Or personally. Don't hold back.
We went to school together. He's a great guy. Rick is a sweetheart.
Recently found out you're related.
Yeah. He was never one of my favorites.
But you remember him from back
absolutely,
in the day.
yeah. But he was massive. But he was never one of my favorite wrestlers. But yeah, everyone I knew loved him. I respected him from afar.
Yeah.
But I didn't love him.
Do you think you'll respect him by the end of this podcast?
Well, it depends on how good of a job James does.
Well, Mike, I am actually very much on the same page with you. He wasn't one of my favorite wrestlers. Like, I didn't understand the hype behind the Ultimate Warrior. And I had a VHS of WrestleMania 6 that they had in Toronto.
Right.
I watched it 100 times. I watched it all the time. And the
That wasn't part of your dowry.
the final match was Hulk Hogan, who at the time I did not know he was someday going to get bloated and have sex with a shock jock's wife. I loved him. And it was him against the Ultimate Warrior, and the Ultimate Warrior won.
Yes.
And I was so sad. Like, it killed me when I'd watch this tape. Like,
It was a major upset.
Why did the Ultimate Warrior beat him?
But, okay, and again, this is going to be like, I'm the outside looking in here. This is not a Napoleon situation. I barely understand what we're talking about, but that's going to be fun in some way.
Well,
but
Ultimate Warrior...
Weren't they both a face? Or was Hulk Hogan a heel?
No, I believe based on my research, Hulk Hogan was definitely a face, a good guy.
Yeah.
And Ultimate Warrior was
and
too.
remained that way in his private life, as we've established in this episode.
The Ultimate Warrior was too. Hulk Hogan became a heel, a bad guy, later I think in WCW. As
Is that when
Hollywood
he was
Hulk.
Hollywood? Yeah.
And he had
That's
black.
when he added the Hollywood.
And he had like sunglasses, and his do-rag went from yellow to black. That is a sign that you have turned. When your do-rag goes from yellow to black, that's bad.
Yeah.
Like
That is such a funny, lazy way to be like, I'm bad now.
yeah. Well, Hulk Hogan had the iconic yellow clothes.
And instead of
The famous good guy color.
and instead of ripping off his shirt iconically when he was good, when he became bad, he got involved in credit card fraud. In the ring.
As the character.
Yeah. In the ring, he'd be like, I stole this card. Then he would make a purchase in the middle of the ring with a stolen credit card.
Sickening.
Yeah.
This is why wrestling, and I'm very excited to be lucky to be a guest on this episode, because there's like, when I say I don't know anything about wrestling, like, it's not in like a shady way where I'm like, okay, but it seems like something I would like. Like, I like sports, I like pageantry, I love camp, but there's some way that I've never quite understood it. And it is in some way like, and lots of people like wrestling, but in the way it was marketed, I think was marketed for like a very heteronormative male audience, like an aggressive male audience.
Definitely.
But in a way, it's like it's this weird access point for like super straight men to access campiness in a way that was like not for them. And it's like at the same era that like things are popping off at the Elk Lodge and like drag balls are going crazy, and they can't access that, but it's like a way of being like, me no understand John Waters, but this man dress up for me good. Like there is some way that it's
100% right.
so funny to me as that.
I gotta watch two hunks hug for a while.
Yeah, because campiness is like not traditionally for that demographic.
Right.
and then it's very funny to me.
It's very reality.
Experience camp in that way.
It was totally reality TV. It was like sort of stupid and easy to watch, but you got caught up in this dumb stuff, like these dumb relationships, and someone inexplicably turns on someone, and you're like, oh no.
But with reality TV, we can all agree it's somewhat real. But there's a way with wrestling, it is like drag, but it's.
But also, these characters are classic archetypes. Hulk Hogan, a bloated Italian man. Ultimate Warrior, a guy with anklets and face paint. You know what I mean?
Like, what do they call them? Like stock characters.
Like from
whatever.
Commedia dell'arte.
It's like Commedia dell'arte.
Yeah,
Exactly. And thanks for dumbing it down to my reference point.
You know what? By the way, I saw a thing recently that it was 34 years ago today that Earthquake sat on Hulk Hogan and almost killed him. And I remember watching that on my TV as a kid. I was disgusted that the Earthquake sat on Hulk Hogan, and Earthquake was so heavy he broke all of Hulk Hogan's ribs. In the story goes, it was probably just so Hulk Hogan could go film a movie. But
Mr. Nanny or
Bionic Commando or whatever. Oh, what was it? Suburban Commando.
Suburban Commando.
Gump's wife.
Yeah.
but when you were like, was there a Santa Claus moment? Like, was there a part of you as a kid that thought it was a bit real?
I don't remember.
I think everyone kind of knew it was fake,
Yeah.
or that the matches were predetermined, or that it wasn't. People didn't really do full violence to each other.
But did you buy the emotion? Were you like, he did break Hulk Hogan's ribs.
No, I think I always just thought it was pure entertainment. I don't think I ever thought it was real. I don't think people do.
So when the Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan and you were upset, were you mad at Vince McMahon? Who were you mad at?
I was just
the shareholders.
Well, it's the shareholders of the WWE. No, it's like when you watch a TV show and a character you like, something bad happens to them. You're like, no, why did they do that to that character?
Why'd they take Jeffrey Jones out of this movie? He's not going to be Beetlejuice 2. Oh no.
Please know I'm not asking in a way to be like, why do you believe it? Like,
No,
there's
I
no
get
genuine way. I'm like, I've never quite weaved the dance of the access point. So I'm like, so where is your brain at when you're feeling passionate about it?
Knowing you, I'm sure if I really still watched it and I was like, watch it with me, I actually think you'd probably like it.
I think I would too. That's the thing. I just never... It was never on in my house as a kid. I was like an only child with these like old ass, my 80-year-old dad. So it was never on. And then by the time I discovered it, I was like, there's some piece I'm missing to get what's going on.
Well, you'll see. I've
sorry. I didn't mean to.
Included some flair of what was going on, and the characters are great. There was all sorts of fun characters. Well, let's get into it. The Ultimate Warrior. So, the Ultimate Warrior was one of the most popular wrestlers in the history of WWE. He was a big guy.
According to these two guys.
But ultimately, the man behind the character was complicated, to say the least. And Mike, you were showing us pictures of the Ultimate Warrior on your phone. I mean, what an iconic look. He was so tanned
and
he was so muscular.
It's jarring. This is the first time I've seen him without makeup and as an older man.
Well,
in a sweater vest.
Yeah. The Ultimate Warrior was born as James Hellwig in 1959 in Indiana.
Hartnett?
No, I wish.
No, James Hellwig out of a hellmouth that cracked as a fissure in the earth.
Yes.
He came out fully slicked with oil. Hellwig?
Yeah. Hellwig.
Hellwig. Which is how you could describe a lot of the hair in wrestling, I think. Kind of as a hellwig.
Yeah, well, maybe they knew something, his ancestors.
He was destined for it.
He was the oldest of 5 kids. He was raised by his mom, and his dad left his family when he was 12. Mrs. Hellwig.
I won't be in a house with an Ultimate Warrior. I'm leaving this family.
Yeah, it's like a lion pride situation. It can only be one alpha male.
Hellwig, James, I'll call him. He started with weights.
Call him Hellwig.
He started using weights when he was 11 years old.
Ultimate Hellwig.
Hellwig and the Angry Inch.
Sorry, James.
No. James, as a kid, felt like
call him Hellwig.
a nervous, insecure kid who wasn't into sports, believe it or not. But he got into weights, and next thing he knows, he's like pretty ripped, this James Hellwig. Prior to his career in professional wrestling, James was an amateur astronomer and arborist. Just kidding. He was an amateur bodybuilder. I just thought that'd be a twist.
Well, it's because James Hellwig sounds like the name of a man that helps fight Dracula, like as an academic in a way, because he knows about trees.
No, he was doing bodybuilding
No, he's mostly doing
competitions in
bodybuilding,
like
yeah.
Georgia. He actually won Mr. Georgia in 1984
Wow.
doing bodybuilding. That's pretty impressive. But
Sure.
yeah, that was actually in the 1984 book too.
Oh, yeah, George Orwell's 1984?
Yeah. So at this time, James Hellwig, he's got a dream, and it's to be a chiropractor.
Now I don't know what's real and what's
No,
not.
that's real. He
Okay.
really was like, I'm going to become a chiropractor.
Nice.
Yeah.
You just break your spine.
Yeah, exactly.
Snap you in half.
Exactly. I'm going to align your spine, Ted DiBiase.
He just crippled like 7 people and was like, maybe I should get into wrestling. I'm too strong to be a chiropractor.
However, at the time, the famous wrestler, the Iron Sheik, he had a shtick where he would go to bodybuilding competitions and get the bodybuilders to swing around these 70-pound weights. And there was like a challenge, like, can you swing these weights around as long as I can, the Iron Sheik? And they would put this on TV. And as a bodybuilder, James Hellwig, pre-Ultimate Warrior, was actually on TV doing this competition, but he failed.
And I'm
You can watch it on YouTube.
I'm sorry again to be the noob. I have heard of the Iron Sheik, but what is his concept?
Well, a lot of wrestling wasn't exactly the most sensitive in terms of, cultural stuff. And I think he was literally an angry sheik.
He was an Iranian guy.
Yeah.
So there was Nikolai Volkov was a communist Russian wrestler that the crowd would boo because they were patriotic Americans. And then the Iron Sheik, was like an Iranian guy that they would boo. And, in the wake of the the hostage situation under Jimmy Carter.
The Iran-Contra crisis?
Yeah.
There was a duo called the Quebecers. There was, for real. And I think they were not popular. And the Dino Bravo was a Quebec guy, and he
Right.
was a
You're
villain
telling
too.
me the Quebecers were not popular in the WWE?
Oh, yeah. I was actually reading, because later we'll talk briefly about Sergeant Slaughter. And his
Sounds cool.
thing was he was like a American army guy, but when they wanted him to turn heel to become a villain, in 1991 during the Gulf War, he became an Iraqi sympathizer. His character. So like Hulk Hogan as an American guy fought Sergeant Slaughter, an American guy, I'm sure a Republican in real life, who in this character was like pro Saddam Hussein. And he looks like a G.I. Joe guy.
So funny.
Oh yeah, it's always stuff like that.
Yeah, anytime you mention one, you got to just tell me a little bit. Just give me a taste.
I will. Oh, absolutely. Okay, so
So the Iron Sheik, because he loves Iran, is making people swing bags over their heads.
Basically.
And then Hellwig is doing that.
and that was his first foray into wrestling. And you can watch the video on YouTube, and it's insane. Like, he's jacked as hell. Like, he's
And this is
absurdly
probably
huge.
before he has access to the steroids he'd later be on.
Or makeup.
No, I think he probably did.
Oh, right away.
He looked I don't know if you could look like that without being on steroids. I'm obviously not an expert, but
Do you think steroids were like just like aspirin in the 80s? They were just everywhere?
1,000%, and it plays into the story
Oh,
later.
I'm
but
so sorry.
no, that's fine. But without question, there was a whole scandal in the wrestling world in the early 90s because they were on steroids, and people were like, that's illegal and really bad for you.
And at this point, he lived in Georgia, so he was on those Southern Fried steroids.
Yeah.
With a side of Mama Hellwig's cornbread.
Georgia steroids. Georgia steroids. How sweet. So in 1985, some guy called Rick Bassman, who might be relevant to the wrestling world, I don't know, he kind of picked a few bodybuilders and was like, I'm going to make you guys a professional wrestling team. And it was James Hellwig, a couple other guys, and a guy named Steve Borden, who went on to become the wrestler Sting, who was a famous wrestler for like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Sting basically looked exactly like the Crow.
Like Sting.
yeah. Sting would have, sex for an entire day in the ring. No, Sting looked like the Crow.
The Crow, the character, the Crow.
Like
Yeah,
Brandon,
and he was like a
Bruce Lee
goth, mysterious
died on
guy. And
Why'd they make a goth guy have the name Sting? It's like having a goth guy like, here he is, Paul Simon, the goth.
Also, why in like the late 80s are you naming a wrestling character Sting? There's
Yeah.
already a really famous guy named Sting.
that's a great point. That's a really good point.
There's
But
so many goth names you could come up with. Yeah, Sting, neither goth, also
yeah.
in use.
it's a great point, and I don't know why. I always remember I was a WWF guy, Michael, not a
Me too.
WCW guy. So
Yeah.
I'd hear of Sting, and I'd look at him, but I'd be like, well, what's this guy's
Yeah.
deal? But
As
he was like,
boys-
mysterious.
As boys, you just hear rumors of Sting.
Both Stings. I wonder if Sting and Sting ever met up and had a drink.
I hope so.
Or a, whatever. Okay, so James Hellwig and Sting.
Do you mean you hope they got together and had sex?
For 2 days.
I do.
Hey, we both have the same name. Should we? Yeah.
They're both fit. So this wrestling team was known as Power Team USA. Now that is sick.
What's not to like?
Yes. So they were pitched to different wrestling organizations as team, and a guy named Jerry Jarrett liked the look specifically of James and the guy who became Sting, and he put them together as a tag team called the Freedom Fighters. I guess they fought for freedom via wrestling,
Yeah.
which is pretty good. James Hellwig went.
If you're gonna do it, that's the way.
Yeah. James Hellwig went by the name Justice,
Okay.
and the other guy who became Sting went by the name Flash.
Okay.
Justice and Flash. Okay.
Yeah. So the characters didn't really work. So they went over to the United Wrestling Federation and became heels. They put on goth makeup and they called themselves the Blade Runners. What a neat tip of the cap to Philip K. Dick. I know that's not, Android's Dream of Electric Sheep was made into Blade Runners. So I wonder if they were fans of his writing. Anyway.
We are now called the duo the Men in the High Tower.
Hit in the High Castle.
Or the High Tower.
Yeah.
When we're in the ring, Hitler's won.
yeah.
Imagine.
Imagine.
That duo didn't really work out, but this is where Sting got the Sting character, and he stayed with that and went on for years and years. Meanwhile, James moved over to a different wrestling federation and called himself the Dingo Warrior. Now, I'm not a marketing executive, but you know what's not as good a name as the Ultimate Warrior? The Dingo Warrior is not as good. That was his name, the Dingo Warrior.
You've said a lot of stupid names in the past 30 seconds, and the Dingo Warrior is absolutely the worst one.
Yeah.
Dingo Warrior.
And he still had the similar look that he was famous for with the face paint and stuff. I don't know if he
Was he Australian?
Yeah,
or
maybe he was supposed to be an Australian. I don't
Or
know.
a wild dog? What?
I
the
don't
ultimate
know.
Australian?
After a little bit of time as the Dingo Warrior.
That's really the name someone picked after in the 80s.
Here he is as the Dingo Warrior.
Yeah.
Feels like he did too much coke one night, watched a nature documentary, and came in and was like, I got a great idea.
There is certainly a lot of speculation in what I read that the Ultimate Warrior may have been enjoyed cocaine. That's just speculation that I certainly read.
Well, he certainly
A
enjoyed.
wrestler? I can't believe it.
As the Dingo Warrior, one major difference in his look is that he has a mustache, whereas as the Ultimate Warrior, smooth on the face,
Wow.
except for the makeup.
But the dingo must have represented the dingo, maybe. I don't know. Well, don't worry about a dingo eating you, baby. The Dingo Warrior might eat you, baby.
That was his character's gimmick. If he won, he'd eat all your babies.
So the Dingo Warrior was heel at first, then babyface, and I think everyone listening knows, heel means bad guy, babyface is a good guy. And eventually, in 1987, things really panned out for him, and he got into the WWF, which is like obviously the big wrestling.
It's like Broadway
organization.
for dumb guys.
Think of it as Broadway for dumb
Broadway for dumb guys.
No.
That's why he picked an animal. He confused it with the World Wildlife Federation. He said, if I put an animal in the name, maybe I'll get in.
So he was the Dingo Warrior at first, but within a few months, he thought maybe that name is actually really stupid, and he came up with the Ultimate Warrior, which is actually a really good name.
And you think he came up with that? No help, no aid from any of the marketing
I
team at
believe
the
it.
WWF?
No, I believe he did.
Yeah, you think
It's
he
not
just
that
had
hard.
an epiphany one night and went, you know what? I could do better.
Honestly, yes.
Okay.
I do. At first, when he came on stage, his music was a song called "The Warrior" by Scandal, which, if you look it up, was way more uplifting than I expected. It's kind of adult contemporary, like Patti Smith sings on it.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of like, yeah, but eventually, because the WWF had to start paying bands to use their music, they just made their own song for him. Yeah.
Can I just say, I feel sorry for the diehard Dingo Warrior fans
I know.
who must have felt betrayed and heartbroken when he was suddenly now called the Ultimate Warrior. Because they...
A decision he made
Built-
alone with no help.
And they had this like intense, probably emotional bond with the Dingo Warrior,
Yeah.
and now he's thrown it all away.
Ultimate Warrior, I know.
The Dingo, there's just, he's just got red and blue makeup. There's nothing that indicates
He's not
a
dressed
dog.
up like, yeah.
I know. I actually tried to look up like what specifically was the Ultimate Warrior character, and there isn't really a much of a description that explains like what the idea is. He seemed, at least in my mind, to use like, I guess, Native American imagery.
Yeah.
Like you say, Evany's kind of got like a lot of frills going on. He's got face paint going on. Like, I don't know. He was just a warrior. That's all you can really say about the goddamn guy.
He was a goddamn warrior, period.
And the ultimate one. So
I wonder if he went like on a trip to New Zealand or Australia and saw kind of like a haka thing, and like maybe that, and then say that where he's got the dingo thing and the ankle things kind of seem like I wonder if it's like a Maori, like he's sort of like engaged with Maori culture in a way you would like walking past a poster in an airport and went like, okay, that's me now.
Well, you know,
Dingo.
we'll learn later that he certainly had kind of an intense personal philosophy. So I'm sure it was really thought out. Okay. I'm not kidding. I'm actually not kidding. So I don't know. We'll see. But when he was wrestling, his opponents, like, because, you know, a lot of them are friends, the wrestlers, and they all kind of didn't like the Ultimate Warrior. He was way too rough when he's wrestling because, you know, they're
Not
working
cool.
like they're working together.
It's
and
like
you
dancers working together, kind of
Exactly.
like our acrobats, yeah.
And, you know, I think like good wrestlers, they try not to hurt the other people they're wrestling, obviously. They, you know, and
Except
it
for
goes
when
back.
Earthquake sat on Hulk Hogan's chest and broke all his ribs.
Yes, John Tenta.
So he could do that sex tape.
So the Ultimate Warrior, he was grabbing opponents by the groin, picking them up, dropping to the mat. He wrestled Bobby the Brain Heenan. Remember him, the manager with blonde hair, and the Warrior was way too rough with Bobby the Brain Heenan in real life, and Bobby the Brain Heenan had to get neck surgery and was like really injured because the Ultimate Warrior was too goddamn rough with him.
Damn it.
Which actually pisses me off
And
because
was
I
this-
liked Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yeah.
And was this storyline stuff or actually no?
The injury is real.
The injury is real. Okay.
So he would go overboard.
Yeah, like
in the ring.
genuinely not in character. Like the real people were like, fucking James is way too rough out there. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this multiple times, but there's a really interesting Radio Lab episode about the line in wrestling between what's real and what's fake and how fans are fascinated by that. And the biggest example being in when Bret the Hitman Hart was fired, or he left the WWF and he thought he was going to win his final match, and they tricked him in real life and had him lose the title, and he was enraged, and that was all genuinely real. And so, like, there's this thing, apparently, I guess, with wrestling fans where it's like, you know, it's, of course, a show, and it's not real, but there is real stuff at play, too, and you're trying to find that, which is pretty interesting.
That is
Which is kind of like the podcast.
Yeah. What's real,
You know,
what's not?
I got in a little tiff with Chris. What's real? What's not?
Yeah.
Who's to say?
I can't wait for our aggressive divorce proceedings. Wow.
None of the fights are real. We're just kidding. So, none of the other wrestlers don't really like the Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, he's too rough. But the fans don't know that. He's really popular, the Ultimate Warrior. And kids love the Ultimate Warrior, apparently. And it was starting to become clear that the Ultimate Warrior might become the heir apparent to Hulk Hogan. who was like the king of wrestling at the time.
Okay.
So at the time, there was a character called Honky Tonk Man. And Evany, I'll just explain it quickly. He was basically Elvis, but a wrestler, and he was bad.
Imagine if Elvis did wrestling.
That's the character. And he was evil, basically.
Honky Tonk Man was evil.
So
And when he went, my family lived in Calgary when I was a kid, and locally there was the local wrestling league, Stampede Wrestling, and Honky Tonk. Before he was Honky Tonk Man, he fought in Stampede Wrestling.
Honky Tonk Boy.
He was Honky Tonk Wayne.
Whoa.
And like Dingo Man or whatever, when he moved up the ladder, they were like,
Dingo.
yeah, like Dingo Man Wayne. No, they like changed his name ever so slightly from Wayne. They're like, Wayne won't fly
Man
in the
is
WWF.
better.
Yeah. No one can relate to Wayne. Everyone can relate to Man. Yeah,
Let's zoom out on that.
Yeah.
What is a Wayne and Hart?
I just don't know.
Mike, do you remember who the Honky Tonk Man's manager was?
Was it Jimmy the Mouth of the South
Yes,
Heart?
Jimmy Hart.
Who just appeared at Ajax Comic Con as
Dude.
Jimmy the Mouth of the South Heart.
Are you fucking kidding me?
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
amazed he's alive. I'm so happy to
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, was such a good manager. He was a little guy.
Better
with-
than the Colonel.
He was a little guy with a mullet and a mustache, and he was like, a real fast talker, and all the managers always cowards and like running
so the
away.
managers
and-
are like kind of in the corners of the ring, like you would be if you were
Yeah.
actually
And
like a boxing coach, and
Yeah.
then but then they're often kind of pulled in. So
Of
these are like
course.
smaller
They
men
stir
who are
shit
not
up.
muscular, but
They're-
can
yeah.
secretly do
They're
the moves and
actors.
take
No.
pratfalls and stuff.
No, yeah, maybe. Like a lot of times, the manager would be a scumbag, and a good guy's losing the fight, or the good guy's fighting a bad guy, and the bad guy's manager, trips the good guy, and the good guy loses the match because the shitty manager just cheated.
Okay.
Stuff like that happen all the time. Anyway, back to Honky Tonk Man from Calgary. Honky Tonk Man at the time was
Formerly
the longest
Honky Tonk Wayne.
was the longest intercontinental WWF champion ever. Now, I don't know how it works currently, but at the time there was like two big belts in the WWF. Intercontinental was like the secondary belt, and I think the main belt was just the championship belt or the heavyweight belt
And there was a tag team belt.
and a tag team belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Honky Tonk Man,
One of those is a shitty hotel breakfast.
yeah, there's the Intercontinental belt and the eggs and bacon belt. Anyway, so the WWF was like, I think it's time for the Ultimate Warrior to get that belt. So it's SummerSlam '88. Ultimate Warrior was a surprise opponent for Honky Tonk Man. He came into the ring. People went nuts, and the Warrior won. So a lot's going on for the Warrior at this time. A wrestler named Ravishing Rick Rude had a feud with the Warrior,
Great
acting. I mean, Rick Rude's whole thing was just that he was like a sexy guy, I feel like.
Yeah.
Wasn't
And-
that he was rude?
No.
Oh, and the ego
Like
on the
Ravishing.
guy.
Oh,
he wasn't
yes.
afraid to talk about how good looking he was.
Yeah. Same with Mr. Perfect. Remember
Yes.
him?
Yeah.
Anyway, Rick Rude.
I'm in heaven right now. I'm loving hearing about that.
Well, yeah, Mike, pull up a picture of Ravishing Rick Rude.
I know. I need to see him.
Rick Rude said he had the best body in the WWF, and he challenged the Warrior to a pose off. So there's Rick Rude. Yeah.
Looks
Oh,
like
dear.
a hot guy.
Looks like a
He looks like Dave Steeb of the Blue Jays from years ago. That's an equally probably obscure reference, but yeah. He's pretty muscular.
Or sort of like a
Well, they all
Jeff
are.
Foxworthy if he hit the gym.
No,
Yeah,
he looks
yeah.
like Burton Cummings if he was on steroids.
That is what he looks like.
A terrifying idea.
Yeah.
I keep
Honestly,
breaking
I'll-
my piano.
I'll take elderly Joe Carter.
So the Warrior also wrestled against Andre the Giant, who was still around, but Andre the Giant's body was deteriorating, so he was kind of used to just like a new guy would beat him really quickly, and it would be like, whoa, can you believe it? But it was sort of like the end of his career. Kind of a bummer, yeah. So more and more wrestlers started, they don't like the Warrior. He's kind of a dick. Andre the Giant didn't like him. Rick Rude didn't like him. But finally, like I mentioned off the top, big moment, probably the biggest moment for the Ultimate Warrior. WrestleMania 6 in the Skydome in Toronto. 67,000 people there to watch it. Like I mentioned, the Ultimate Warrior, who was a good guy, beat Hulk Hogan, who was a good guy, and to win the heavyweight title.
Imagine
Beat
the
Hogan.
fashions in the crowd at
Oh,
in Toronto at
wow.
WrestleMania 6.
1990-ish. Couldn't imagine.
At that event.
Yep. Basically, the truth was this kind of happened so Hulk Hogan could take a sabbatical. But
went back to school.
Yeah, I'm in a backpack.
I need to find myself, brother.
He wanted to go on an architectural, an archaeological dig.
Chicago architecture boat tour I've heard about. But this was like the Ultimate Warrior's moment to be the star of the WWF, and he was for a while.
He literally was the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. Yeah, he had fights against Sergeant Slaughter, the Iraqi army sympathizer.
Living the high life, I imagine, probably, right?
Well, he was
these days.
But, however, the Ultimate Warrior was living the high life until a fateful event known as SummerSlam 91. The Ultimate Warrior...
You know that event we all know, known as SummerSlam 91.
The Ultimate Warrior was fired right after that match. Prior to SummerSlam, the Ultimate Warrior wrote Vince McMahon a long letter of demands, which was stuff like, he wants the same pay as Hulk Hogan, the same cut of the merchandise. He wanted $5,500 so he could buy a home, plus more time off. He also wanted to see how much money...
$5,500 to buy a home.
Sorry, $550,000.
I want to buy the worst home, Vince McMahon. I want to buy
the worst home possible.
I want to rent a storage unit, Vince, and I won't take no for an answer.
The Ultimate Warrior also wanted to know how much Hulk Hogan was making from his 1-900 phone number. Here's an
1-900. I'm too bloated to have sex.
So just to give you a sense of like the Ultimate Warrior was a weird guy. Here's an excerpt from the letter to Vince McMahon. He said, quote, "You spoke of the Ultimate Warrior appealing to all, old, young, ugly, beautiful, fat, skinny, black, white, a character who would show ups and downs and emotions and intensities. Like a yo-yo I obliged so I could be the one. Where the hell are this man's ups and downs? Total jugular vein popping, yelling at all times. Is this the total picture, character, or presentation that can be the one?" So you can see it doesn't even make sense.
It sounds like Laurence Olivier writing an angry letter to a director or something, having a hissy fit.
Like
Just imagine him shaking the rope in slow motion up and down during the reading of that.
he
At the Moth.
He genuinely embodied this sort of warrior, confusing, mystical vibe, if you know what
So
I'm
he
saying.
wanted to play small as well as big.
Yeah, so he wanted more depth.
He wanted to cry. Then
He wanted $5,500 for a house and more depth.
Now, I don't know if this is true, but it sounds to me like that letter may have been written by someone under the influence of maybe no sleep and a lot of cocaine.
You know, it's not a bad guess. I don't have an answer for you, but it's a reasonable guess.
Okay.
So Vince McMahon, who is an evil man himself, and we did an episode on him, he made it seem like, yeah, Ultimate Warrior, sure, we'll deal with this after SummerSlam, no problem. And he just wanted him to do SummerSlam, and then he fired him. So there was no mention of the Ultimate Warrior for months. No internet at the time to figure out what happened. Fans started rumors that maybe he died. However, in 92, it was hard for the WWF with the steroid controversy and Hulk Hogan about to take more time off. So they brought the Warrior back. Now, here's an interesting thing. When the Warrior came back, he looked way smaller and covered himself in a singlet. And people thought this was because after the steroid scandal, he had to go off steroids. And it was like, people did not even think he was the same guy. They thought it was a different person playing the character. He just probably went off steroids. So the Warrior kind of he's back, but he's still difficult. He was supposed to have a big match against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon, but he got
What
fired.
was Razor Ramon's thing?
He was kind
Knives
of a
for hands.
rockabilly guy.
No, he was a Latino, criminal, basically, guy.
Yeah, he had like a toothpick in his mouth, and he was just like a slick guy. Wouldn't he call everyone, "Hey, Chico"? Wasn't that
Yeah.
him? Or is that Dennis Miller?
I think both of them. But Razor Ramon was played by the wrestler who was Scott Hall, a guy who was not
That's
Latino at
him?
all. Yeah.
Oh my God, he
Wow.
looks like Tom Sharpling when he's old.
But
that's
yeah,
Razor Ramon.
he played a Latino villain basically, but He was all this you know it all.
And Ric Flair, you may
I know,
he's a
yeah.
legend.
It's like when
Ric
Justin
Flair, I
Trudeau
know about.
played that character.
right.
Remember?
No,
Yeah,
when he was awesome at that Halloween party. But wait, James, can I ask before, because you're doing this is great context, but like, do we have any? So okay, the other wrestlers didn't like him. He was too rough.
Yeah.
He kind of is writing coked up letters to Vince McMahon like an early AI trying to be Kelsey Grammer. But what is like? Do we know like? So he's the oldest of 5. His dad left. Like, do we have a psychological understanding of kind of why he's off, or what is the way he is off?
Honestly, like we'll get into his beliefs that he espoused.
Okay.
But I honestly don't have a good reason for him being the way he was, other than he was a bodybuilder in Indiana. I don't know, and his dad left. Like that's the only.
And on steroids.
I have no
Steroids
good.
fucked his mind.
I have no good like Batman,
The
Joker,
Iron
Orange.
Sheik made him lift something. Today.
Yeah.
His
Young.
origin story.
I'm looking. I guess I'm looking for his Joker origin moment.
And I, if there is one, I don't know it.
Okay.
It
But-
might have been. I don't want to slander the man, but substance affected. You know, I don't know. A lot of those
But they
wrestlers
all
who
were.
did, yeah, but a lot of them got fucked up. A lot of wrestlers died very young,
Yeah.
did really dark stuff, and you know, is it CTE? Is it steroids? Combination of both? It's very common, sadly. So, here's a funny thing. So yeah, just a little bit of a segue.
Ideal segue for me.
So, like I mentioned, he's fired now because he failed a drug test. I got to that, right? Or did
No.
I got cut
He
off.
said he
before
got
I
back
said
and he
it.
was
I
smaller.
thought he was fired because I thought he was fired because he wrote that crazy letter to Vince McMahon.
He got hired again,
And he came back and he was a little tiny,
He came
still
back
a tiny guy.
Because it
skinny.
was also a drug test situation.
and then he got fired for a drug test. I actually didn't find out what drug, so I don't know if it was steroids or recreational.
They came back.
Imodium.
Rolson.
I'd test positive.
He
for
came
that.
back with a Ozempic phase.
This is interesting. Now, it's kind of for legal reasons, but I believe he did it also for personal reasons in my heart. In 1993, he legally changed his name to Warrior. So he was Warrior. That's his
One name. Madonna, Prince,
I
Warrior.
believe.
Okay.
And I didn't.
Imagine it was Dingo.
I couldn't find this, but a person on the Discord said that. So, like, his kid's last name legally is Warrior.
So his name is James Warrior or just Warrior?
From when I looked up, it's just Warrior. But I guess if you have one name, your kids take that as the last name.
Right.
So
Isn't that how that works?
he's out of the spotlight for 3 years. He comes back in '96 again. It only lasts a few months again because he got suspended for missing shows. Warrior said it was to grieve the death of his father, but Vince McMahon, really great boss, said he didn't believe him because the Warrior hadn't seen his father in 10 years and did not care about him. Very sensitive.
And this is a cruel question, but how many of these guys do you think hadn't seen their father in 10 or more years?
Oh, dear God, you're probably right. So yeah, it's kind of winding down wrestling wise for the Warrior. He's just been too difficult. He has a brief period in the WCW.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They tried to recapture that WrestleMania 6 magic because Hulk Hogan was in the WCW as a heel,
Right.
and they brought Ultimate Warrior back and had him fight Hulk Hogan to kind of recapture the magic. But this is really funny. So before the fight, sometimes they have microphones in the ring, you know, and they talk to each other in the ring to kind of progress the storyline.
Well, Michael Buffer character, so it kind of sounds like this.
Yeah.
In this corner.
And the Ultimate Warrior was supposed to talk for 10 minutes. Okay? He talked for 27 minutes
Whoa!
on live TV. And the crowd got really bored.
Like Fidel Castro making a speech for 5 hours.
Yeah. So
Wow.
this stuff like
Or
that.
that president who did it and then he died like 47 days
Oh,
later
yeah.
because of his inauguration address was too long.
he
What was he talking about?
Well, you know, it's always stuff like, Hogan, you said this and that, and I'm going to, you know, but 10 minutes is more than enough of it. You don't need half an hour. He had control of his own storylines, though, at the WCW, but it resulted in really weird stuff. His storylines included things like, quote, magic smoke, which could knock out his opponents. And there was a bizarre segment where the Warrior appeared in a mirror and only Hulk Hogan could see him. This was something the Warrior came up with. I think I've seen that clip on YouTube. So he didn't last long in the WCW, and that was pretty much the end of his wrestling career. He sued the WWF all the time for various things after this, which honestly, I mean, probably warranted, really. So after retiring from wrestling, the Warrior became a conservative speaker and drew criticism.
He did 27-minute engagements anytime you wanted to book him.
Yeah, and he drew criticism for anti-gay comments. At a young at a Young Republicans hosted event at UConn, not the territory, the college in the States. In 2005, the Warriors said to gasps from the crowd, quote, "Queering don't make the world work," which never took off as a phrase, I guess.
really shed some of that eloquence from that beautiful letter he wrote to Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Was he wearing his anklets and outrageous makeup when he said this?
Wait, can you say the quote again?
Queering don't make the world work. He later walked it back a little bit.
I've never heard it as a verb.
Me neither. He said he had a blog, that
The ultimate blog.
yeah, the ultimate blog. So he's rebranded at this point, like as a blogger, a motivational speaker.
What year are we in?
Like 2005.
Okay.
Life
So
coach.
early blog culture. We're kind of live journaling. Energy.
Yeah. And he said all this horrible, offensive stuff in his blog that revealed him as a horrible person, basically. He wrote this really weird stuff about Hurricane Katrina victims, basically being like, they shouldn't expect handouts because they contributed nothing to society anyway, and they were messy and dysfunctional. Like, obviously, most of those people are, African American people. He criticized the idea of Martin Luther King Day for some dumb reason.
Kind of a random fire hose of hate. There's
Oh,
not
absolutely.
A lot, it's just kind of. It's as loose as his flowy little anklets. It's just wherever he.
He was a hateful
yeah.
man. He wrote this about the death of Heath Ledger. Quote,
Again, I'm talking a fire hose of hate. You're kind of loose.
That's
We're
true.
leaping topics.
You probably weren't expecting to jump to there specifically, but yeah.
No, you usually kind of glom on to trans people in bathrooms or something. You kind of pick your hateful thing and you kind of succubus that. But he's kind of flying around. Heath Ledger, Katrina victims, queering don't make the world work. This guy's loose as hell.
Well, he wrote about Mr. Ledger, quote, "By today's standard, I do have to agree that he was a great father, perhaps even greater than the father of the year, Hulk Hogan. After all, Leather Hedger did what it took to kill himself. His kid is without a father, yes, but the negative influence is now removed and his own child has a chance for a full recovery." And probably the meanest thing you could ever possibly write.
I'm going to guess that Ultimate Warrior never met Heath Ledger in his life. Or
I think you mean Leather Hedger.
I can only assume this hate is 100% because he did Brokeback Mountain.
Right.
That's the only.
Or he didn't like his Joker. The only real Joker was Cesar Romero in the Batman.
Your origin story's more clear than mine. But okay, that's the most psychotic thing I've ever heard anyone say.
Yeah.
So, but okay, can you read it again?
Okay. He said, "By today's standard, I do have to agree that Heath Ledger was a great father, perhaps even greater than the father of the year, Hulk Hogan. After all, Leather Hedger did what it took to kill himself. His kid is without a father, yes, but the negative influence is now removed, and his own child has the chance for a full recovery."
I would like to write a paper on this paragraph. By today's standards, it's a crazy way to start. Heath Ledger had a kid. That wasn't part of that. His kid was young. Like, that wasn't really part. No one was kind of talking about that. And then it's kind of a retroactive burn on Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, he had to work that in there.
Yeah, and then if it is about Brokeback Mountain, he's kind of not mentioning that. So that's wonderful. That blew my mind.
Yep. Yeah, he was the ultimate lunatic.
Freak. Yeah, but it does make me think his Joker origin story is daddy issues based.
Could be. That's a good point.
Right.
Well, yeah, his dad did leave the family. His mom had a stepfather. He had a stepfather. I don't know. I don't know what went on
Had
there.
a stepfather.
Yeah.
That really fucked him up. Made him hate Heath Ledger's work.
Here's the thing. The Ultimate Warrior co-wrote a 5-issue Warrior comic book that was
Oh.
insane.
Okay.
The series focused on a concept that he coined called Destructity. Destrucity. I guess it's like destruction, but it's like he's changing the word destruction, but it's impossible to say. Destructity. Anyway, here's how the comic.
That's why you wrote it down, James.
Here's how the comic book defines Destructity. It describes it as the living of one's life in the way of a warrior, according to the warrior's 8 disciplines. Those are as follows: physical, beliefs, moment of mastery,
Blogging.
attitude, commitment, association, integrity, and wisdom.
Real makes some nouns, adjectives, and verbs in that those 8.
The comics seem really weird. There's
Do they?
yeah, and like Santa Claus is in it, and they're
Were these self-published or were they like
I'm not
through
sure. He,
Scrawled
like,
on a
wrote them.
napkin?
Yeah.
There's a like I looked at pictures of the comic, and I want to say there was a frame that made it seem like the warrior had sex with Santa. There's some weird thing where Santa's tied up and the warrior's pulling up his pants. I don't know.
Pulling up his
I could have
pants.
missed. Maybe my own perverted mind, misinterpreted it. I don't want to slander the sacred warrior, but anyway, Mike, you had something?
No,
You're
I'm just looking up the.
Looking up the warrior comics.
Yeah, they do.
I'd love to see some of the art.
It's pretty bad art, isn't it? Yeah, there you go.
they're-
Look it up at home. Oh, there's one of him strangling the Grinch.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's Christmas
Is
themed.
that him as Santa?
Yeah. Anyway. Well, yeah, the warrior had a blog where Mike's looking at photos. The warrior had a
Or hit a
blog,
blog.
where the concept was like social philosophies explained by the warrior.
Huh.
I think he's famously bad at doing explaining.
Yeah, but so he's like he's one of those guys. He's like trying to explain these complicated concepts in his way that, like, if you scan it, you're like, oh, maybe this person is smart, but then you actually read it and you're like, oh, you're insane.
It's the Russell Brand effect.
So later on, the warrior would try to get into the fitness market, and he released something called the Warrior Workout. But
I
they were
can't believe he waited this long to get into the fitness market. That seems like step 2. This whole blog era is wild.
But there were no actual exercises in the Warrior Workout. It was only motivation to exercise. It came with a 75-minute audio recording of the warrior yelling motivational slogans and a 10-page foundational essay setting the record straight on where your exercise head needs to be.
Wow.
Whoa, did you
I would
read
think
any of it?
No, I did not.
Just him yelling for 75 minutes. Okay.
So in 2014, the Warrior made amends with Vince McMahon, and he was inducted into the WWE
Thank God.
Hall of Fame.
Huh.
Now, this is, so after he sort of made amends, the Warrior appeared on WWE Monday Night Raw and was noticeably sweating profusely. The very next day, he died of a heart attack, 54 years old.
54.
Now, here's a kind of weird thing.
The next day.
Yeah. After the Warrior died, the WWE made the Warrior a centerpiece of their burgeoning corporate philanthropy. Oh my God, I'm just having a brain fart.
Destructity.
Philanthropy. God, I'm sorry.
Philanthropy?
Philanthropy. The word just.
They're burgeoning
know what?
corporate
I've
destructivity.
been reading for 40 minutes, and a word just said, "Nope, this is
I
not
think
happening for you."
Philanthropy or philanthropy are both allowed.
Philanthropy. Thank you. So basically, the WWE created the Warrior Award to be given out every year to a recipient who exhibited unwavering strength and perseverance. But it's in the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior. But it's like, this guy was like a hateful lunatic, and it's nice you're giving money to people in need, but maybe don't name it after the Ultimate Warrior,
Yeah.
who was a total freak. And that's it.
So
That's the story of the warrior,
the
the
story
ultimate
of
warrior.
James Hellwig,
Mm.
the ultimate dingo warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is surprising to hear, knowing, like, I liked wrestling, and in my memory, it seemed like there was a full decade where the Ultimate Warrior was, like, the #1 wrestler, but it seems like it was a
few
very
years.
brief period.
Yeah.
Huh.
His light shone bright, but
I think you're
Short.
just thinking of his blog, Mike.
Well, yeah, I think I am.
You're thinking of his wildly successful blog.
I would wake up in the morning, make coffee. First thing I do, open up the Ultimate blog, and
The ultimate blog.
well, maybe it's time for us to bring out the
Evilometer.
oh my God! Look at the size of his arms and shoulders. I think the evilometer's been juicing. Oh, and also he's wearing face makeup. And what's that? Don't talk about Heath Ledger like that. How dare you, evilometer?
Evilometer.
His name is Leather Hedger, and you know that.
So
Why are
Evany,
your balls so small?
it's time to input a evil score for the Ultimate Warrior. You've done this before.
I honestly don't know, because he's in a world where everyone seems a bit coked up and evil, and then I just feel like we've just heard about like a hollow husk of hate, and there's no brain inside. Like I feel like we described like an AI of a wrestler gone wrong. So
Yeah,
I guess
there's no like relationships where usually like, you hear like, oh, there was a family or a wife involved or a series of girlfriends or mistreated or something. Was he just like a solo man?
He did have kids. I didn't.
The Ultimate Kids.
I watched a YouTube documentary and I read a few articles.
Right.
I didn't read anything about his family or,
All right.
or negative or anything like that. I don't know. It may have happened. I just don't know.
he seems like someone that would have maybe wanted to be a cult leader or something like that, like a weird
Yes.
narcissism that's kind of flat and bizarre.
Yeah.
But I think for like, there's almost a way like in the context of wrestling, I guess he's a 7, and in the context of all evil men, he's a 4.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I'm going to give him a 3.6 for his hateful views, but it didn't seem like, as far as I know, it didn't seem like he did a whole lot evil beyond that. He was just a hateful guy and a freak.
And it seems like he at least fairly hated literally everyone. It was really anyone that he
That's
found.
true.
It was again kind of a fire hose of it.
Yeah.
I will say, yeah, what am I going to give the Ultimate Warrior, Mr. Hellwig? Didn't like hearing that he was a little too rough in the ring and that he would grab people by the crotch, that he injured Bobby the Brain Heenan's neck. Didn't like his views on Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, okay.
Didn't like his
Loved his views on Ledger.
Ledger. Didn't like him saying queer and ain't making the world go round or whatever. I don't agree.
No, me neither.
But he seems like just maybe. And where was he from? Georgia? Or was
Indiana.
I think he just seems like he had the same views of every man from Indiana. I'll give him 4.
I think that's
Ultimate
about
Warrior.
right. Well, that brings us to the end of the regular episode. Evany, you're going to stick around and do a bonus episode with us.
Can't wait.
Evany.
Oh, I was going to say, Evany, because at the start you said you didn't know this world of wrestling. Do you feel like now you've been to wrestling university?
I feel like Hulk Hogan. I took a sabbatical and spent the year studying wrestling abroad, and I'm ready to go get my PhD.
I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start watching it together.
I honestly, truly, I just never had the access point.
We started watching F1 after we watched that Netflix show, so anything's possible.
You said that with such a high test aggression. I'd love to.
Evany,
Yes.
you are the creator of a TV show that is on Amazon Prime in Canada and Hulu in the States called Davy and Jonesy's Locker.
That's true.
You also you were star in it. You wrote a lot of it. You are the creator. So
You also star in
and
it.
I'm in it. So please check it out.
Please do.
And check out the old show you made if you're in Canada on Crave called New Eden that Michael is in as well,
Yeah.
and I'm in.
Check them all out.
You have a book
I do.
that you can buy on Amazon or any bookstore.
Or Hulu.
Yeah.
Mine on Hulu.
And it's
.com.
called What I Think Happened.
Yep.
Funny essays about history.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, that was really good. That
Got
was
a cat?
a really good.
I know you have
breakdown.
a cat named
I got a
Bruno
cat,
who's,
yeah.
if you're watching this on YouTube, is on the table. And you know what? Not a lot of people watch it on YouTube yet, that's fine. But if you want to, subscribe to us on YouTube because I put these goddamn videos up there. If you want to watch them, please do.
Yeah.
And that's it. Mike, was there anything you wanted to mention?
This is coming out Thursday. No.
Just a Thursday.
Me neither.
Yeah. If people, what's coming up? People live in Kitchener-Waterloo. Jackie Purico and Chris Locke and I are going to be doing June 14th at the Yeti. 2 shows.
Nice.
So it's always a fun show there. Get your tickets. I'll put the link in this episode. And yeah.
You know what's so funny? I have a show in Kitchener too, but I think it's the 12th. I imagine I keep having opposing
Whoa.
shows to you in Kitchener for some reason.
You guys could become Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior of doing shows in Kitchener.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the main thing I think we want to promote right now is if you're in Toronto, June 22nd, please come to our live show. It's going to be really fun.
June 22nd, the Paradise Theatre in Toronto. I'll put the ticket link in this episode's notes as well. We'd love to see you. It's always a fun time. And you can hear yourself laughing on the recording.
Yeah, and meet us after the show.
Yeah.
At the bar
I
there.
really can't stress enough. If you're a fan of the podcast and you've thought about coming to a live show and you never have, they're so good. Like, you think these guys are funny now. Wait till you see them live. Truly, God, get a ticket.
Thanks, Av.
I'll hang out with you in the audience.
And we will be, after the show, behind some velvet ropes with intense-ish security. You'll be able to sort of see us, shake our hands, briefly be, whisked away by security. But, yeah, it's still nice to see you.
Well, that was another great episode of...